American is the enemy, right?
North Korea, the world's most secretive country with perhaps its most terrible reputation. Since the pandemic, it's been impossible to visit North Korea as a tourist, but even before, you'd see nothing more than a carefully selected series of people and places to avoid showing the true face of the country. In this video, we go to an unknown part of the border between North and South Korea.
This feels like a whole different deal.
Visit an NGO that helps people escape North Korea.
Can the North Korean people live in freedom?
And meet a North Korean refugee who escaped her country at just 14 years old before resettling in South Korea.
Nowadays, if you have money in North Korea, you can enjoy the life.
Let's get started right away.
Good morning, guys, from Seoul. We are hosting a group trip here, and today we are doing something really special. So if you're new to our channel, basically in 2018, we lived in Seoul for a semester during college, and during that time, we got to do some really incredible work with this NGO that helps North Korean defectors integrate into South Korea. And it was honestly one of the most eye-opening travel or immersion experiences we've ever had. And we really wanted to bring an element of that to this group trip. And another thing we of course did while we lived here was going to the DMZ, the demilitarized zone. And there are tons of package tours that do this, but they all gotta go to the same spot. So we wanted to do something a bit more unique on this tour.
We met up with our guides who would bring us to an off-the-beaten-path part of the DMZ, a part so far undiscovered by international tourists.
All right, boarding our bus.
Always safety first. Fasten your seatbelt. Why two Koreas? We had a Korean War. Why Korean War? We were the colony of Japan. 1910 to 1945. Korea independence came unexpectedly and suddenly. After becoming independent, this small country became the venue of so-called proxy war between capitalism against communism, between the Soviet Union and United States.
The closer we got to the DMZ, the more the security and military presence was ramped up along the road.
So we have made it to Egibom. We're here at the exhibition hall, first of all, before we get to go up to the observatory, which we're so excited about.
We're literally only gonna be 1.5 kilometers away from North Korean Seoul. North Korean soil, not Seoul. I'm too used to saying Seoul. And the only thing separating us from it is gonna be the river. But on top of that, we are actually going tomorrow to the headquarters of Liberty in North Korea, which is one of the biggest NGOs in the world, working with North Korean defectors.
Hi, I'm Sokeel Park, and I serve as the South Korea Country Director for Liberty in North Korea. We're an organization which is working with North Korean defectors to basically ultimately bring forward freedom for all North Korean people.
Our guide was explaining a bunch of history and geography and stuff, but then kind of left out that we're standing right next to North Korea, and Isabel was like, is that North Korea over there? He's like, yeah. South Korea, North Korea. This is not at the closest point yet. We're gonna go over there in half an hour. But even from here, it's just wild to see it. It feels so different from when we did the regular DMZ tours because there's so few people here. It doesn't, it just looks like we're looking into actual North Korea, which sounds kind of stupid because duh. But I mean, when you're at the DMZ, it feels so not real in a way, they've just built it for South Koreans to see it. But this feels like a whole different deal, to be honest.
It's so peaceful here and so beautiful and well maintained that you would never think this is an area of such high tension. No. Because it feels very zen.
It goes against everything you'd think and expect from this place. We're crossing the suspension bridge over to the observatory, which means that we're just getting closer and closer to North Korea. We're probably about 2 kilometers away at this point. The closest we'll be is 1.4, which is kind of insane, to be honest. And just water separating us. Technically, we could swim, but I don't think we're trying that today. Apparently, this is a very popular place for school classes to come, South Korean school classes. So there's a lot of primary school kids here. So the cool thing about this particular observatory is that it used to only be accessible by the military, and it's an actual like military outpost. So they stand up there and like look into North Korea to see like developments or what they're doing, and yeah, I guess kind of just like monitoring the situation. And until very recently, you weren't allowed to come here as a civilian, and they just recently like renovated this place and opened it up for visitors to come and see it. But mostly it's just Koreans here. It's not really like a place that foreigners know of yet. So hint hint.
And that's when we got our first real views of North Korea. Thanks to the clear weather, we could see far towards the north. On the other side of the river, we could see a country that on the surface looked the same as on our side, but that we knew was an entirely different world.
So I can see a bunch of rice farmers through these in the rice fields in front of the buildings, but the buildings look like they're not really completed, right?
First, we noticed the abandoned propaganda buildings, the farms, and the natural beauty. But then, we saw the people.
People on that. On the left.
Oh, I can see it. You see,
Oh my
under
God.
that mountain, there is
Yeah.
like a pavement where people are walking.
They're walking back and forth.
Yeah.
By the wall toward the water, there are soldiers standing under like what looks like a drained pool.
It felt both surreal and slightly inappropriate to watch as people were living out their lives in the world's most oppressive dictatorship. And we wanted to get a wider perspective on North Korea and its people, which we got to do the following day. And we'll get back to the DMZ in a minute.
In addition to going to the DMZ, we're doing something so insanely cool. We have arranged with Liberty in North Korea to host the group for a live session, and we're gonna get to hear their stories.
We were invited inside the Liberty in North Korea office by South Korea country manager Sokeel and North Korean defector Ilhwa, and got to learn from both of them about the lives of regular North Koreans.
When you hear North Korea, what's the first image, the strongest image that comes into your mind? Kim Jong-un, the streets.
Isolation.
Equality. 1, 2, 3, bang! And this is normally the answer. But if you Google image search North Korea, then you can kind of see what the internet thinks of. You know, you'd be forgiven for thinking that you'd search Kim Jong-un. It's very one-dimensional. By contrast, if you Google image search South Korea, it's beautiful. There's as much humanity in North Korea as anywhere else. It's just difficult to see that. We need to get through all of those images of Kim Jong-un and missiles and nuclear weapons, and we need to see the North Korean people that have been taken out of that frame.
My name is Ilhwa. That's my hometown. It's called the Busan. It's border city. I escaped North Korea when I was 14 by myself.
Ilhwa was gracious to sit down with us for a Q&A session, and she had an endless stream of both fascinating and heartbreaking stories to tell us.
I live in the border city, so there are like a smuggling. So there is like a broker that my mom knows, and then she suggested they helping me to escape there.
Is that the first time you've heard of someone escape?
I heard middle of the 1990s, so there are like a great famine happened in North Korea. Since that happens, so there are so many escape to North Korea. I see that some people caught in prisons, and it happens a lot. So I know that how dangerous it is. We try to help some relatives to South Korea, but they were caught while they are escaping in China. So we haven't heard about their life since that happened. So they are in the prison camp. We don't know that they are still alive or dead. It's not always that has successful story.
I have to say it's like almost a bit dystopian. Like here we're standing in this highly modernized and developed country, standing on an observatory deck, looking through like binoculars into this heavily impoverished country where the population is heavily oppressed by the government, and we're just kind of looking at them like zoo animals in a way. On the one hand, it feels educational. It feels wild to be able to see this with your own eyes, and for kids to be able to see it, just learn about the history and about the conflict.
Kind of makes you rethink your own life and how fortunate we are to live where we live. It really reminds you to be grateful.
Yesterday we went to Egibong, the observatory, and I'm wondering what your view is on that. What do you think about the sort of tourism around going to the DMZ, looking into North Korea, this fascination of it? Do you think that that's helpful, or do you think it's ultimately a bit dehumanizing in a way?
Well, I think like a lot of those things, it depends on how you do it. We do need to learn more about North Korea. We need to listen to North Korean people's stories, especially North Korean people who escaped. And part of that is, if you have the opportunity to actually go to a place which is close enough to see North Korea, there's different things that you can feel and kind of pick up from those kind of places. In fact, if people have the opportunity to go inside North Korea as well, then it's the same thing. It could be done as part of a, view of really trying to understand North Korea, North Korean people. It could be done in a positive way.
My mom one day told me that we don't have any option. I'm gonna go to China to raise some money, and then I will come back. At home, there's no food, and then my sister is at 5, and then I clearly see that my sister needs my mom. I convinced my mom to sister needs you, not me. So one night I went to school, and then I come back from the school. There's one lady is waiting for me. She actually said oh, just tonight in hours I will help you to the escape. So it was the 2006 July 4th. I never forget. I wanted to tell my grandma I love so much, but I couldn't.
2.5 years, yeah.
2.5 years
Yes.
before you
Okay.
contacted anyone.
No, anyone, yeah. First of all, I sent some money to them and tell them that we're gonna help my mom and my sister and grandma escape first. Then my dad lost.
Yeah.
My dad whole family still living in there. It took me a little bit of time to convincing him to
Oh, really?
remove. Yeah.
Did he think that his family might get into trouble?
Yeah, that's his big concern. Success is very small chance. So majority of people know that, Actually, when my grandma and my mom and my sister escaped, they had a thing on their neck. It's the poison.
So how does Liberty in North Korea actually help people escape the country?
There are 4 key parts of our work. The first starts here. This is the border between North Korea and China. This is where most North Korean refugees have escaped from through this very long journey through southwest China into Southeast Asia. This is the typical kind of traditional route, and then coming to South Korea or the United States.
Sadly, escaping across the border into China is only the first of a long series of hurdles for a defector.
Spending time in China was my darkest moment. I was sold to the one Chinese family. I stayed in China for 1.5 years as undocumented. I successfully resettled in South Korea 2008. But all I think about it is I have to earn some money, and I wanted to bring my family. That's my responsibility. But then also I wanted to study. I had 2 or 3 different jobs that I can make some money. It took me 2 years to save some money and then bring my family into South Korea. My mom and my dad and my sister and my grandma. They all reunited in 2010. So once my family reunited, I felt truly free and liberated.
Successful escape and resettlement stories like Ilhwa's are only possible because of the life-changing work that organizations such as Liberty in North Korea do. We will share more of Ilhwa's story in a minute, but we just want to take a moment to explain how you yourself can make a difference. In partnership with Liberty in North Korea, we've set up a fundraiser to aid their rescue missions, resettlement, and education programs. If you're looking to donate to a cause and an organization that'll truly make a difference in the world, we warmly recommend checking this out. You can find the fundraiser through the link in the description or by scanning the QR code on screen right now. All the money will go straight to Liberty in North Korea's life-changing work. Thank you for your generosity, and let's get back to the DMZ.
Coming here is not really a cultural experience so much because you don't learn that much about the war. You don't really see, the real North Korea, but that's not really possible in any sense. What I do recommend coming here for, though, is just a reminder of how normal and sort of everyday something like this conflict can feel. There's so much tension under the surface. There's constant hostilities between North and South Korea. But when you're here, it's just like any other day. You you would never know there was something going on. But like, this could literally be the same country when you're here.
The outskirts of Seoul are literally right there. Probably 4 kilometers, 5 kilometers away from North Korea. That is pretty crazy to imagine, actually.
This is a situation that you don't see anywhere else on the planet. You could be forgiven for thinking that this is the ocean, but this would be like a rough outline of North Korea. No place in the world where you go across one border and see that level of disparity. Even people escaping from North Korea, they don't escape the effects that living in North Korea for decades had on their body. I end up going to funerals, and too often it's somebody in their 50s or 60s.
So, given these enormous disparities, to what extent do North Koreans have exposure to the outside world?
So for watching the Western movies, it is dangerous. One of my favorite movie is 007. Is that the James Bond movie? Yeah, that was my favorite one. I was like at a mind-blowing experience, like at how cool was it? Like at school, and they teach the Western people, especially American is the enemy, right? But at the movie, he's very cool and tall, and I really enjoyed it. So, and then the second one is like a Korean drama or Korean movies or so. And listen to the K-pop or K-drama is one of the cool thing to do. But at that moment, during the 2006, but nowadays it's really hard because since Kim Jong-un is in charge of the country, the situation is changing.
How many North Koreans, when you say, actually know what the outside world is like at this point?
There's a lot of gradation. It's maybe a little bit like saying how many American people believe in the American dream now. It's like, well, what do we mean by that? And like, people believe in some parts, but they may not believe in everything. More and more North Korean people understand more about the outside world and believe less about, the propaganda and the ideology and so on.
In North Korea, we had only one channel. There's like always propaganda, Every 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock, they show some like a world news, like showing all the not tall building, Western building, but it's like a Singapore and China. But that's my favorite hour to watch it because that's the moment to allow to dream the outside without any putting in danger. Ordinary North Korean people, it's almost impossible to take a plane, I always dream that, one day I wanted to see the plane. That's not even take it on the sky.
Our whole day today started by waking up to a public safety notice on our phones that said that North Korea had just launched another trash balloon into South Korea. As everyone in the group was kind of freaking out, like, is this gonna mean that we're not going to the DMZ? What's gonna happen? But it's so funny because I texted with the guide and he was literally like, yeah, don't even worry about it. This happens all the time. So it's really interesting. It's so normalized here, the conflict. We noticed it when we lived in South Korea too. Like, you don't really ever notice that anything is going on. Like, yes, there are like bomb shelters and that kind of stuff all throughout Seoul. So there's always a sort of prepared mindset, but there's no worry there. It's a very interesting state of this conflict, and I think you can kind of feel it here as well because it's so peaceful. Like we said, like you would never think that this is a place with so much animosity and hostility between two neighboring countries. There's this peace monument over here, which is really cool. It's apparently made from all the empty ammunition or empty bullets that they found here along the DMZ, and they just melted all of it and built this monument. It's supposed to say UN to symbolize the UN and peace.
이번에는 제가 월남 참전자회 화이팅! 월남 참전자회 화이팅! 화이팅! 감사합니다.
Technically, the two countries are still at war. All we can hope for is a peaceful future. Absolutely crazy to imagine how recently these countries were split, or, well, this country was split into two. It's only been 70 years, so who knows what's gonna happen. But North Korea especially seems to, right now at least, not be wanting any reunification. They just blowed up the railway line that was supposed to go between North and South last week. They said that they've formally given up on reunification, but our guide says he's a pessimist. But let's see. Maybe we should be optimistic about it.
We become too different, but still for peaceful mood, we have to actively stay exchanged together in terms of business, culture, sport, etc. So depending on what government's taking the power, they use the relationship with North Korea for their own cause. Some government friendly some government hostile.
Do you believe in reunification at some point?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. Ultimately, I think that that should be a decision that people of this peninsula make when that's possible. That's not our focus. Our focus is more about how do North Korean people live and how can they live and the conditions that they live in rather than the exact country that they live in and those kind of things. So we're more focused on can the North Korean people live in freedom? Reunification could be a part of that, but it's not necessarily the only way to reach that outcome.
So since most North Koreans are unable to leave their own country, are they able to travel within their borders?
My uncle who living in the southern part of the North Korea, during the summer break, I went to his house to stay there for a while. That was my favorite memory from the North Korea actually. That was the first time I see the ocean and beach. It was so beautiful. So it's called the Hamung. It's well known for the nice beach and the weather is perfect.
Did you take a train? Or
Oh, I took the train, but you know what? It takes 3 days for traveling because there is always, the electronic breakdown. Is that the right term? People who are living in the border city, it's much harder to get permission into the Pyongyang capital city. My parents went to the Pyongyang, but it's when they got the permission from the government, they paid extra money. Nowadays, if you have money in North Korea, you can enjoy the life in certain way. North Korea uses the won, Korean currency. Majority people prefer to use the renminbi or the Chinese money or the dollar. When you buy the house, expensive thing like the TV, or you use the renminbi or like a dollar.
Don't they ask you how do you have US dollars in North Korea?
Yeah, but there's always gray area. They're just ignored. They're like, buy or selling the house property is illegal. But if you brave the money into the government, you can.
One could hope that the difficult journey would be over once a defector escapes North Korea and travels through China to resettle in South Korea. But unfortunately, that's when a whole other set of challenges begins.
When people come to South Korea, it's not just completely over. You can imagine how different life is.
So when I first got here, it was 2008. Nowadays, they had so many years of experience. 2008, the South Korean government is still struggling to how to handle this amount of the North Korean people. They have some process of if I'm sick, I can go to check to the clinic. There are some resources that they are provided. One of the things they are struggling is in South Korea, we don't accept the differentiation is very well. We always wanted to be a certain stereotype on the people you have to be this group, this high. If you speak differently, then everyone question about where are you from? So that kind of a discrimination against me, I was very shocked. And then also it's painful. The way they treat me differently if I told them I'm from North Korea. Bunch of questions like this. And then I'm just I'm come from when I'm 14 and then they're all asking me how, political system, such very heavy words. And then are you against the unification or for example that. They always put me put in the one side. That's the South Korean college kids. They don't even care about North Korea anymore. So I feel really sad about it because they lived their life, but it's people who on the a little bit of northern side, they don't care about it. They exist. That's the thing we are working on it in South Korea office. We wanted to show the South Korean people that there are 25 million North Korean people who still live there. So just keep your eyes open. So in North Korea, as a majority of people are, one of the things they are care about is food. They're not even sure for next meals comes from. So that's why it's just a revolution or making some social movement. It's kind of it's too early to say that.
At the office, we got to hear another incredibly thought-provoking story that put everything into context for us.
I didn't have time to record this when we left the Liberty in North Korea office, but I just wanted to put it in here because it was so fascinating to hear the story of one of the colleagues. That person's father left Korea in the 1960s, just a few years after the Korean War ended, and it was so interesting because they said that basically the father's immigration story is basically like the North Korean defector stories, because back then South Korea was a dictatorship. It was super poor, and after leaving, their father hadn't come back to South Korea in 50 years. And when he came back, it was obviously a completely different country. Now, I mean, we obviously only know the modern version of South Korea, and to think that for him, it was basically like leaving sort of like a version of North Korea. He had to bribe someone to get a passport to even leave the country back then. And now that he comes back, obviously this is not at all like the country that he left behind, so he will never be able to go back to that country that he once left. That was such a fascinating story, and to hear about how things actually can change. I mean, hopefully things will change for the better in North Korea as well. I don't know. That was just such a mind-blowing story to me. When you hear personal stories, the version of history that you know, or the way that you see the world, just entirely changes, because you can hear facts about history all day long, but it doesn't really emotionally change your perspective on the world. Maybe it's only when you hear personal stories that you truly get that sense of, wow, this is what this actually means for people, and not just for like politicians or the world or history books.
We've been so thankful, and it's been an honor to be able to help 1,280 North Koreans to make this journey.
We are not the victim. We can change whenever we have freedom. Thank you.
After everything else, dear Ilhwa also told us about her #1 dream for the future. When the conflict is resolved or Korea unifies, she said she wants to go back to her hometown and open a beer bar. Because since living in South Korea, she's absolutely fallen in love with this beverage and wants to share the joy with her people back home. We can only hope that Ilhwa's dream comes true one day, just as we hope that the dream of reuniting with family and loved ones comes true for all Koreans. Exactly what that future will look like, only time will tell. But until then, the best thing we can do is support Liberty in North Korea's work to bring freedom to as many North Koreans as possible and help eliminate discrimination against those who escape. If you want to donate to our fundraiser, you can click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen right now. It's an excellent way to help the organization's vital work and make a real and impactful difference in people's lives. With that, thank you guys so much for watching as always, and if you want to see more fun yet educational travel content, we recommend checking out this playlist linked on screen right now with some of our favorite travel experiences from over the years. Until the next video, which will be the final one from our group trip to Korea, see you around the world.